You're listening to the Culturing Podcast. That's Culture EING, where we believe that healthy company culture is the untapped fuel to growth in your organization. By taking action today on building an amazing workplace environment, you're setting yourself up for an unstoppable, thriving future that will put you on the map and propel you to prosperity. This is your host, Tynan Allen. So come on, let's get culturing. Have you ever felt like the industry that you're in is hard to break into, or it's almost like you're doing something new and the world doesn't quite understand you yet? Well, you're not alone. Today, my guest, Matt Diteljan, is an incredible example of somebody who really paved the way in an industry that was really old school, that didn't even know that certain technologies existed and could really support this industry. And that industry is actually higher education marketing. Who knew that universities were not attracting high school students in a very new way? So Matt and his team have built this incredible organization, Glacier, which actually works on this issue. How do you, as a university or a higher education institution, work with the next generation of people that are going to be coming in, filling your hallways and your classrooms, and who are the future leaders of tomorrow? How do you get to them? How do you access them? How do you talk to them? And I just love Matt's perspective on this. He really has seen it from all sides of the card. He's been the doer, he's been the leader, the CEO, and now he's actually the founder and futurist. And so what does that look like? What does a transition, even from a leadership perspective, look like? How do you still maintain culture throughout the whole growth journey, and then even past the point of being a CEO? How do you still stay part of the culture, and how do you still see that as an important area to invest in? And then also, this is a really awesome show, an episode, if you are a leader that likes to look at the future. Matt is spending all of his time now looking at growth, opportunity, new things, and it's really incredible to hear his perspective on this. And I must say that I pulled out a few gems from him. So please listen in. I'm excited to have my guest, Matt Diteljan. All right, Matt, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast. I'm so excited to chat with you because you have this awesome, interesting title, Founder and Futurist. So let's start there. What does that look like right now in your role? What are you excited about in your role, and how did you get here?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I don't really know where we came up with that title, but it was just kind of a funny thing. And then, so the story is basically, I started this company a long time ago when it was in my last year at university, and then over the last few years, we've grown a lot, and we've really matured quite a bit, especially in the last 2 years. It seems like, we've just basically been on a rocket ship, essentially, in terms of our growth. Yeah. I think a big part of that was really myself and my ex-co-founder. I bought him out of the company about a year ago. Mm-hmm. We really realized that we were the ones kind of holding the company back from growing a lot. Okay. And I think, rightfully so in a lot of ways, because it can be hard when you're just starting out and you have this little embryo of a company. Yeah. And you're growing it. Like we grew it from nothing. We grew it out of our parents' basement, basically. Yeah. From $0 in revenue to it's in the millions now, and to go from like there to where we are now, there was a lot of really scary times, and it still is. Like every August comes around where we renew most of our contracts. Right. And I remember in the first few years, we always like look at each other, in August and be like, we might have to close the company down in a month, because we really just don't know. You really have no idea. Yeah. It's like you don't know if your cash is going to carry you for the next few years, and so it was quite a journey. And then we got some really great, talented people on our team, and now the current CEO of Glacier, Jordan Wenzel, he's a phenomenal dude, and I've known him since I've been like 13 years old. It was when we started playing hockey together, and then we went to junior high school together, and we've always remained friends. And then he was really the one to come out. And if you could, like, I know your podcast is about culture. I could literally pinpoint the day where our culture changed.
Okay, talk about that. Take me to that day.
Yeah, so I think in the first few years, quite honestly, we had kind of a shitty culture.
Okay.
It was a culture primarily based on fear. Largely because myself and the other co-founder were quite afraid a lot, because it was, it was like I said, like you never really, you're always like a month away from not knowing if you have enough cash to keep going, and like, all these things. We were scrimping and scramming, trying to, build this thing. So I think that fear from both my partner and I kind of trickled into the culture in the company. And then my friend Jordan Wenzel, who I brought on, I was telling you about, he had been working there for, maybe 6-8 months or something like that. And it was after actually I had my CEO quit, or COO. We had a COO at the time. He quit. And Jordan came up to me, and he was pretty much the other key guy at the company. And he came up to me and he's like, Matt, we really got to change some shit around here. I'm going to leave. And he basically called me out, and then we sat on the floor in my office, which I call it office. It was it was honestly a janitor's closet. Like it was literally, no, sorry, not janitor's closet. It was the server room. Okay. Because there was just no other room in the office. We'd outgrown the space. And so we sat on the floor and talked for about 2 hours, and just like had one of those coming to Jesus moments where we talked for about 2 hours and had a really heartfelt conversation. And it was by the end of the 2 hours where I kind of realized I've got to get over this fear, and I've either got to shit or get off the pot. Essentially, I've got to either commit or just move on. Sure. And it was that moment where I committed, and I was like, okay, I'm in this, let's do this. And I pretty much offered him the job of being the GM, and then promised him that I'd give him some equity. And then you fast forward 2 years, and it was in that moment where I decided I've got to let go some of this control, empower some other people. And that was kind of the epicenter of what then I think led to what is now. I think we do truly have a world-class culture, and I think it all can pinpoint back to that moment, because one of the guys on the team had enough bravery to, because it's not hard to approach your superior, your boss, and say, I think you're doing a shitty job. Like, that takes a lot of courage to do that. Exactly. And so luckily him and I had enough trust where he felt comfortable enough to come up and do that to me. And then, yeah, man, everything just changed, where I just realized, like, I am largely the one holding the company back, and I need to get out of the way. And then there was a whole other thing, another story I can go into with my business partner, where I think him and I started not seeing eye to eye on the future of the company, future direction, that kind of a thing. And we realized it was probably best for us to part ways. And then that was a whole other thing. That was about a year ago. And then it all kind of culminated a few months ago, where we had our leadership meeting. And we kind of realized as a leadership team that I didn't really need to be in the day-to-day of the company anymore. And in fact, it might actually be better for me to be outside the company. Sure. And thinking about, the very far ahead future, where all the disruptions from technology are going to come. What's the future of media and advertising, all that kind of stuff, and really be outside the company in a way more, chairman advisory kind of role. And so we did that. So I'm not the CEO anymore. And it's been quite a transition. It's been really kind of wild. I mean, for the first time ever, I'm not signing checks anymore, which is kind of exciting, but also scary. Yeah. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's really great. Like the change in the culture, I think, is tangible, because the other thing I realized, which I didn't even think about until we did it, was it created a leadership vacuum at the top. Yep. And someone had to fill it. And so it just sucked everyone up. So we had to promote other people into other positions. Other people had to step up. And it's been really, really cool to see everyone step up and really adopt it and take it on as their own. And it's been really cool. And like, I've gotten some letters from some people on the team just like thanking me and stuff. And for me, that's what makes it all worthwhile, is just seeing the growth in people, seeing these people that have no leadership experience, stepping up into these roles and just crushing it. And I honestly do believe it's because they're amazing, and it was just simply because they never had an opportunity before, right, or no one ever saw it in them. And so seeing these young, because the oldest person on our team is 30. Well, we have our CFO. He's a contract CFO. He's older, but we don't count him. But we have a super young team, and create that leadership vacuum, and now they're killing it. And I'm the founder and futurist, whatever that means.
I love it. So a lot of companies are actually where you're at. They are coming from a place of being a startup. They're growing, and they have a young team. Sometimes it can cause kind of problems where they're like, well, how do we promote people because everyone's the same age and they've all been here the same amount of time? Like, how do we figure out that sort of seniority piece? Because, you know, at the end of the day, we love flat organizations, but there does need to be structure and leadership still. Yeah. So how do you guys start to like be proactive about you know, helping people with their career plan?
I think I truly believe in a meritocracy. The best people, regardless of race, gender, age, you know, all that kind of stuff, they should rise to the top.
Yeah.
And I just believe in building the system that allows people to do that. That's really what it is. So I think if you build the right system where people rise based on merit, not being sycophants and sucking up to the boss or whatever, or politics, something like that, but like the best people rise to the top, I think it'll just kind of naturally take care of itself. That's what I believe.
So even when you talk about your culture and, you know, it used to maybe be a place of fear or maybe a bit more controlling environment, what are sort of the staples of your culture now that you are so proud of?
Yeah, it really comes down to our 3 core values. Have fun, do the right thing, and always grow. And we invest in those values. And I think it really took me truly understanding like how important core values are and what they really mean. And they're so important because it's really like the screening for first of all letting people onto the team,
right,
and assessing whether or not someone's a good fit.
Yeah.
But then also it trickles and is injected into every single decision. And I think it's super, super important that they are, because your mission, your purpose, your vision, all that kind of stuff, that's your end objective. You know what I mean?
Right.
The values are kind of like the road of how you get there. And I personally believe you have to always follow the values, and they have to be ones that you're willing to take a huge financial hit for, as we have it a lot in the past. You got to put your money where your mouth is, because if you don't have values, you don't really have that road that you know how to get there. So for us, the values are really the ones that really mean it. And I always found too that the values of the founder or the leadership team, as like their personal values, have to match that of the company.
Right.
If there's not alignment there, it's just not going to ever work, and it has to be genuine.
Right.
You know what I mean? When we first did the values exercise and the mission and purpose statement and that kind of thing, I think we got it wrong. I think we did it just simply because all the business books told us we had to do it.
Check off the box.
Exactly. But it wasn't until I actually internalized it and realized like, wow, no, this is like, you know, this is just part of my piece of art, part of my canvas, and it's super integral. So and I think I realized too that it's not so much the values aren't what you aspire to. Okay. It's more of a process of discovery. It's the values are already there. Yeah. Your culture is already there, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
It's really about just identifying it and then further supporting it. And so I think it took us about 2 or 3 years, I think, to finally get it right. And now I think we've nailed it.
Yeah.
And I think the values are like right on.
I think that's something to note for anyone that's listening too, is oftentimes people do check off that box. They read it in some sort of entrepreneurship, how to start a business book, and they want to do the right thing. And so then they start by going through, what is our mission? What is our values? How do we create our culture? Let's write a culture book. But it hasn't had a chance to become its own thing yet. And so in a way, although you might have had a, you know, kind of negative culture at the start and it had to grow and improve, I think that actually was probably the best for you guys, right? Like if you would have just started with this amazing culture, it might not have been that genuine thing, because it didn't happen from that brave moment from your now CEO, right? And that story is going to resonate so much more strongly. So it's actually kind of, I think, probably a good thing, although it probably wasn't always good. So that's interesting. I think a lot of people have been struggling with that in conversations I have, where they're sort of like, well, how do I create this culture? I want it to be great. But sometimes it just takes the patience like you guys had. So that's awesome. When it comes to the future, You know, even from the start, you guys have been almost pioneering an industry that didn't exist in some ways.
Yeah.
Right? Your DNA holds within it this. Do you describe yourself as higher education marketing? Is that how you talk about it?
Yeah, and we're kind of going through a bit of a branding exercise right now.
Okay.
Because we started another company called Cascade Influencers.
Yes.
Which is a influencer marketing company.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to figure out how to best brand the two companies so there's not confusion in the marketplace, all that kind of thing. Because Glacier, largely it's an advertising company where we help universities and colleges get their messaging in front of high school students. Yeah. That's really, and we're a media company. And honestly, like I have not seen a company that's better at finding the most efficient use of media to get in front of Gen Zs. Like, I honestly think we're like,
and that's what I'm saying. You guys are pioneering in some ways. So in your DNA is this sort of, hey, we're going to crack the egg on this, and no one's done it before. So like already you're there, but now what does the future look like? How do you keep that up?
Yeah. And so this is the exciting thing is we are a super innovative culture, and I'm really proud of that. And this influencer company, I think, is just a great case in point of that. Influencer marketing, even though it's been around for some time now, it's still just like on the precipice of growing. You know what I mean? In 2016, I think there was 1.1 million sponsored posts on Instagram.
Okay.
In 2018, there was 4.4 million. So it grew by a factor of 4 in 2 years. And then in 2019, they're projecting over 6 million sponsored posts. So it's going to grow again by 50%. And like we're the only ones in Calgary, the only ones.
Yeah.
And then even in North America, there's, not a ton.
Right.
There's,
of course,
depending on who you talk to, some say it's saturated, some say there's still room. But what we've kind of done is we have picked verticals where no one's really playing. It's kind of that old, red ocean, blue ocean strategy.
Yep.
We're not going to go where everyone else is fighting.
Yeah.
We're not going to go try to fight over the morsels. We're going to go find a blue ocean. So we're going to take what we already know, which is we are the best at advertising to Gen Zs, and we're just going to build out this other new product with influencers to continue to do that. And then, so we're doing some really cutting edge stuff in higher education with influencers. We're definitely the only influencer marketing company focusing on higher ed, which is really cool. Then we got some other stuff in the works too with sports entertainment and stuff. Right. And it's been really, really cool.
I love it.
But what is the future? So yeah, we kind of have these two businesses now where we've got the out-of-home advertising company with the high school advertising with Glacier, and then we have the influencer marketing with Cascade. And so I've really done a pretty big deep dive into figuring out what does the future of those industries look like.
How do you translate that back? So again, we're talking about culture and team. So how do you have these thoughts in your head? That's your job now, is thinking about this stuff. Yeah. How do you go about trickling it back down into the organization? How do you also pull from your existing team? Because, you're telling them as one of the 3 values to always grow. So they're wanting to think like this too. How do you meet in the middle and actually execute on this future type thinking and plans?
Yeah. So the way I like to think of the analogy is it's kind of like a ship. Maybe not a contemporary ship, but more of a, Mayflower / Titanic kind of ship, where you got that dude on the top mast with the binoculars, looking out, making sure there's no icebergs. That's me. That's what I'm doing. And then Jordan, he's the CEO, he's the captain on the ship that, I can tell him, like, Jordan, there's an iceberg,
right.
30 degrees starboard or whatever. And then he'll guide the ship and make sure we don't hit it. So that we're a Mayflower, not a Titanic. So that's kind of how I see it. And so with this kind of stuff, he's really the sounding board. I'll go back to him and be like, dude, this is where the future's going. This is definitely what's happening. And then he'll go, oh my God, Matt, okay. And then, he'll work with a team to figure out what's the strategy on how we're going to get there and all that kind of stuff. And we're trying to embed that in the culture more. We're actually going to be building for the first time ever an R&D team where we're kind of like the media lab. So we're going to be thinking about the future of media always. And we're putting a budget behind it. And we're going to do some really cool stuff. Like, I can't wait for the next, because I'm not really in the company anymore, but that's some of the stuff that I just really enjoy doing that I'm going to continue doing.
But it seems like a team like that would also function in a role similar to yours, where you're going to kind of work a bit more closely together.
Yeah.
They're going to have some of the binoculars. They're going to be looking
Yeah.
out for the icebergs as well.
Yeah.
And that's going to become kind of a neat loop.
And actually, now that you mentioned that, one of the things that we've done is, because we kind of got into the branding exercise I was telling you about and the strategy of the company and all that kind of stuff. And we quickly realized as an executive team that we are not going to be able to do all this work or do all these answers ourselves. It's just too much.
Yeah.
And further to that, the people that are on the ground, talking to the clients, talking to the high schools, talking to the students, all that kind of stuff, they have so much information that we need to be able to make the best decisions. So that's where we got to make this a collaborative effort. So we just kind of did a quick presentation on, hey, here's where the strategy of the company's at. We need everyone's brains on this. And it's been really cool since telling people that, because some of the direct verbatim quotes have been, now that we know that, we can actually see how our role directly ties into the future strategy and vision of the company. And so it actually just has created more engagement too, I think. Which is kind of a funny thing, because it's like, I was always worried to do that, to bring the whole team in, because I didn't want to scare people. Because it's like, some of these questions are scary. It's like, how was augmented reality going to disrupt out-of-home advertising? It's like, that takes a lot of work to figure that out. It takes a lot of work. And there's no right answer, right? And then if you start thinking like, wow, okay, we're going to get disrupted. Holy shit, the company might go under in 5 years. Oh my God, all these questions, right? And then you start thinking about competitors, and you see someone out there that's doing something that is really cool, and you're like, oh my God, are they going to start infringing on our territory? It's like all these things. So I was always worried to give that stuff to the team. And I always felt like it was my job, and it was like my burden to bear. But since, again, letting go, it's like, okay, everyone actually wants to do this stuff. I didn't realize that. And it doesn't worry people. It actually gets people fired up. So it's just been a positive all around, I think.
That's amazing. Yeah. Sometimes I think people are in that position of bearing, all the weight. And then you hear other leaders talk about this stuff. I was just listening to the founder of Spotify. And when you look at it, like, Spotify created something that like didn't happen overnight. Like these things they're not quick. They require patience, and they require large teams that have a lot of brain power. So to get to that point, I think takes a lot for a leader. And so, like, kudos to you for that. So my curiosity though is, how do you keep yourself in check? Like, there's going to be a lot of leaders that are listening to this podcast saying, oh, like, I've been where you are. Like, I want to release control, or I want to empower people, but I can find that sometimes it creeps back in, and I want to, still bear the burdens. So how do you kind of keep yourself in check and accountable to the promises you've made to your team?
You mean in terms of not getting back in and getting my grubby hands on stuff in? It's tough. It's tough. If to say otherwise, I think would be not true. It is difficult. Even, the other day I caught myself again. I was like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. That was stupid. But it's just, I think, being conscious of it, and just knowing that it is better for the company and better for everyone involved if I am less involved, because it really forces people to get outside their comfort zone. That the true area of growth is where you're not so far outside your comfort zone that you're terrified of, and you don't think you can do it. It's not in your comfort zone. It's just like, a millimeter outside it. If you can just constantly grow that millimeter out, then you'll always be in the zone and improving your abilities. And so I always try to just like kind of slap my own wrist, like, no, Matt, keep your hands off it. But I think the other thing too, though, one thing that we have kind of glided over, which is, I think, is a very salient detail, is that you really need to have the right team. It took me years to get it before I could actually do this. It wasn't like this was my first try. I've been trying to do this for probably 4 years, maybe. Well, not 4, maybe 3 years. And it didn't work the first time, or the second time. It took a few tries, but now we have this rock star team of young people that's just phenomenal, and I just knew, and I trust them implicitly, with everything. And so you kind of have to have that degree of trust where you can step away, because like I said, I don't sign the checks anymore.
So go into that. What were your hiring mistakes? What did you learn from, and then what did you change when it came to building your team?
Hiring mistakes. Oh God, how much time do you have? Hiring mistakes. Yeah, hiring's always a tough one, man, because that old adage of hire slow, fire fast, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm kind of at the point now where I've really been rethinking the whole notion of firing someone, and if you even need to fire someone. I'm not sure where I'm at yet with that, but I'm starting to second guess that point. That is just part of the narrative that everyone just assumes to be true, that you have to fire people. I learned recently that in some European countries, you are not allowed to lay someone off or fire them until you have found them another placement.
Wow.
Which is kind of a mind-blowing thing when you think about it. You know, it's just because we're in this North American
They have a responsibility.
Right? Yeah, they have a responsibility. So I've been thinking about that a lot, and in the early days, I have a lot of regrets with some hiring and firing mistakes, especially because I truly believe that no one should ever be surprised when they're fired.
Right.
They should know and see it coming. You know, like we had to let someone go recently, and we decided a long time ago that we're going to have this 3 strikes rule, where if you go against one of the core values, that's grounds for immediate termination. You know, if you do something which is an ethical violation and you ought to have known that it was wrong, then that's grounds for immediate termination. Or one of the other values. Although I don't know how we could ever fire someone for not having fun. But the right thing is really the one, like ethical breaches. Absolutely not. But if it's a competency-based thing, then people have 3 chances before they're ultimately terminated. And I mean, everyone on the team right now has 0 strikes. It's pretty uncommon for it to happen. Right. But we did have this situation recently where it did happen, and there was a lot of pain in the short term because this one person, she was a phenomenal individual, but I just don't think the role was a great fit. And so there was a lot of pain because, she was struggling, and then it was harming the performance of the team. And, you could start to see some eyes kind of turn and be like, come on, like you're letting the team down. But I truly believe that short-term pain for keeping someone on probably longer than we should have, I think is more important or less harm than violating that rule of the 3 strikes. I do believe in giving someone like a really, really fair shot, and we try to coach and do as much as we possibly can. And so that's kind of where we've got to now. But I was just talking, Michelle Berg from Elevated HR, she was the one that kind of blew my mind, where she was like, we don't fire anyone. I was like, whoa, that's kind of shocking. And then I started thinking about the European countries as well that have that policy, and I was like, maybe you don't have to fire people. You know what I mean? Because let's question that assumption. Do you really need to do that? So
sure. Interesting. I think a lot of people could use some time to think about that kind of thing, and what is the responsibility of leaders to bring people on, right? People put their trust in you. And I was just reading in Simon Sinek's book, Leaders Eat Last, and he talks about how people actually are okay with leaders being leaders. And sometimes we put a lot of expectancy on our people, and it's good and empowers them, and it gets them to think like a CEO and an entrepreneur kind of thing. But there's also an element where there is a difference, and there's still a responsibility that people carry that we have to realize and recognize and come up to that standard. Go into communication. So you talked about people coming to you, and if you have to slap yourself on your own hand, but how would you, again, I'm trying to get into the mind of you and someone like you, but then also people are going to be listening that might be more in the role of somebody on your team. So in your position as a leader, futurist, thinker, you're seeing all this stuff up top, bird's eye view. What do you want someone to do, and how do you want someone to approach you if they have a problem, or they have a conflict, or they're seeing that not that you're out of line, but that they can give some constructive feedback? How do you want to receive that, and how would you want somebody to approach you?
First of all, I think the most important thing is intention. And if the person's intention is to improve the company, then I will never ever think ill of whatever they have to say. So that's number one, is if you have good intentions, I believe you can almost say anything with honesty. And I do believe our team all has great intentions, and they all do truly, like, they love that value of always grow. They want to grow our company, and they want to grow themselves as individuals. So that's the first thing, is intention. And then after that, I think the biggest thing is just tell the truth. Just be honest, and don't be afraid to speak the truth. I hate that whole notion of, I remember in business school, I was taught this concept of the shit sandwich. Have you ever heard this?
Yes, yeah.
When giving someone feedback, tell them, something nice, and then give them the feedback, and then tell something nice again. It's like, no. If the only reason you're doing that is to pad someone's ego, then screw them. It's their job to get over their ego.
Sure.
Okay? And I think I've done a really good job of beating down my ego, the world just kind of beat it out of me, to be honest. Like, it wasn't my intention. It was just the world just beat me down until I don't have as much of an ego anymore. But it's really like, just deliver the message with truth and honesty, and be blunt, because it's the most effective form of communication. And I do believe that the moment that people stop telling the truth is when trust starts to erode.
Sure. And
trust is just the bedrock of any company. And so I always tell people, if you don't like something Jordan's doing, go tell him. You know what I mean? And to say we're perfect at this is not true. We had an instance at our company a little while ago where, because I still have a desk there, and you think this is messy, you should see my desk, to be honest, because like everyone just kind of like piles stuff around my desk, like, oh, there's Matt's stuff, and then just like pile
it's
it.
The new server room.
Exactly. And so it was a mess, and some people were complaining about it, but no one came up and talked to me. They like kind of back channeled it, and I was like, God, come on, guys, just like come up and tell me. And then so it got to me, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna show people that I, like, when I'm wrong, I will emphatically admit it.
Right.
And so I cleaned up my shit and got it out of there. But I do believe that it is so paramount that people call out their leaders and call each other out. I don't know if you ever saw that Office episode where they had like the complaint box and people just complaining about each other.
Right.
It's like, what does that do? You know?
Yeah.
Imagine if you had a group of friends and no one called each other out. You wouldn't be friends for very long. I can tell you that much. Right. So it's like, the importance of truth, I don't think can be understated. It's so important.
Right. Yeah. Truth equals trust. That's so incredible. So wrapping up, when you think of people that are in your role or want to be where you are, what's your biggest piece of advice on creating this type of environment? And I think even more so, I'd like you to talk to them and say, if they're in a place in their mind where they know deep down, they know who they are, they're not listening to that type of feedback. They're not receiving, they don't like when people challenge them. How do these leaders become more like you and more open and more willing to receive feedback and take that growth mindset? Like, how can people make that flip?
I think leaders who don't listen will soon be surrounded by people who have nothing to say. So if you just, and I see it all the time with people that just have egos, and they're afraid to, look deep down and realize that they could be wrong. You know what I mean? Like it's like a hit to their ego for some reason. Right. So I just think if people have a hard time accepting criticism, you got to change that, because I just don't know how you can build a company without accepting criticism, or like having, like, it's so healthy to have people call you out. And the thing I always like to say too is, like, it's not, me versus you or whatever. It's me and you against an idea, and we're just polishing this idea.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I welcome criticism. In fact, I like go headlong into it, because it is the best way to sculpt the idea and turn that rock into a diamond.
Any last things to say?
Yeah, the last point on that I'll say is, like, be careful what you wish for. I think leadership is very overglorified, and it can push you to the brink in a lot of ways. And I've been there a few times, and it can be daunting. I'll put it that way.
Well, how refreshing was that? Our world needs more raw and real conversations. And after knowing Matt personally for quite a few years now, I know I can always depend on him to keep it real. I trust that as you're listening to Matt speak, you even probably resonated with an element of his process, his journey. And that's what I want you to leave with today. I want you to recognize that you as a leader do not have to be perfect. You can have bumpy roads and bumpy journeys. I can guarantee you that Matt 5 years ago didn't know that his company would have changed leadership a few times and had him move into a role that he didn't even probably see at the beginning of it. So let's be honest, you have room to grow, you have room to change, and you don't have to be afraid of the journey. So thank you for listening, and please make sure to stay connected with us. You can find us on Instagram as well as on all podcasting platforms, and I encourage you subscribe today so you can stay in the loop about what's happening on the Culturing Podcast and be informed about all the upcoming episodes. As a reminder, you've been hanging out with Tyne and Alan today. That's all for now. Be blessed.